Castlevania was released on May 1st of 1987. Developed and published by Konami, Castlevania is the first game in a long-running series of sequels and spin-offs. The game takes place in 1691, and as the protagonist, Simon Belmont, it's your duty to kill Dracula. However, in order to do this, you'll have to traverse Dracula's castle, Castlevania, which appears once every 100 years. Throughout the castle, you'll confront a number of monster movie staples like Frankenstein and mummies. Each level looks vastly different from one another and adds new enemies and new and different platforming scenarios. The game is a side-scrolling action platformer where your main ability to attack is a whip. You're also aided by sub-weapons that you can pick up throughout the levels, which will consume hearts to use. Hearts drop from the majority of the castle's destructible candles. The sub-weapons include weapons like holy water, which is thrown on the ground and will burn for a few seconds, or the cross, which acts like a boomerang, or the axe, which you throw in an arc above you. The sub-weapons can drastically help you with boss fights. For the most part, the holy water is your best bet as the damage locks the bosses in place, and the crosses and axes can be helpful as well. A unique feature of Castlevania is the way the game's protagonist controls. When jumping in Castlevania, you'll always jump the same distance when jumping left or right. This makes your jumps predictable, however when you jump you'll have to commit or risk dying, as there's no way to correct your jump once you're in the air. This jump mechanic, for better or worse, gives the game its signature feel. For seasoned Castlevania veterans, the jumping mechanic isn't an issue, however it can be a little startling for players new to the series. Castlevania's gameplay is also fairly difficult. The game ramps up in difficulty drastically on each of the game's 6 levels, and it can be a challenge to beat even for people that have played the game for years. The game is masterable though, and also predictable. So once you know how to handle certain enemies and bosses, they become much easier to deal with. Each of the levels are extremely diverse, having completely different look from each other, and having different enemies. Up until this point, in early 1987, Castlevania probably has the best graphics of any game released so far on the console. The game's sprites all look great, the main character has the signature faceless Konami character look, and all the enemy sprites and bosses look detailed and nice. The game environments also shine as the backgrounds are detailed and diverse from level to level. Castlevania also probably has the best soundtrack for any game released up until this point on the NES's library. The game's soundtrack has stood the test of time and is iconic and recognizable to anyone who's played the game. There's not a single bad track on this game's soundtrack, and it's good enough to listen to outside of the game. Overall, Castlevania is the first entry into one of the most iconic and longest-lasting series of all time. The series has had sequels released on almost every console made after the NES, and the entire series exists thanks to this entry in the NES's library. For when this game was released, it pushed the console both aurally and graphically when it came out and was easily the best looking and sounding game on the console. All this combined with great gameplay makes Castlevania a must-own NES title that I couldn't recommend enough. NES Chronology is a Patreon-supported show, and would not be possible without the support of its patrons. If you'd like to support the show and receive some perks, click the logo and give what you can.